People may often wonder what makes a church great? What makes it impact a community? Is it a personality, a person, maybe even a pastor? The answer can be found from a true story that took place in the life of Samuel and Susanna Wesley. Samuel was a pastor in the small town of Epworth, and while there one night, an angry church member set fire to the parsonage. Fortunately, the Wesleys were awakened by the blaze and were able to rush all of their children outside, or so they thought. Once outside, they realized that their son, at the age of 5, was still in the house, standing at an upstairs window. As the fire raged throughout the house, the boy looked helplessly down at his panicked parents. It was too far for the boy to jump down, and by now the house was too engulfed in flames to go back in. One of the Wesley's neighbors saw the young boy standing at the window. Then the neighbor rushed over to the house directly beneath the window where the boy stood. He then placed his hands against the blazing side of the house. Another neighbor saw what he was doing and quickly raced over, climbed on top of his shoulders, and also placed his hands against the house. Then another, and another, and another. This repeated until a human ladder had been formed, and the last man smashed the window to bring down the 5-year-old young John Wesley. So what makes a great church? It's not necessarily a personality or just a person or even just a pastor, but it's the generations that have come before us and those that will come after us. It's the people who have and will offer themselves as a human ladder. This is Heartland.
You know, one generation building on the other has always had an impact in not just the cultural, the world that you live in, but particularly the spiritual world in which we live in. You and I today, those of you who attend Heartland with me, we are part of the byproduct of generations being faithful. In 1948, services started being held in the home of Sister Edith Going. Just a mighty woman of God, and small group of believers started meeting together, and they soon erected a tent there at the fairgrounds and started having services. And then they found a machinist hall that they started renting on Indiana Avenue for just $20 a month. But they felt like God is going to do something with these group of believers. 1949, they purchased some property on Jefferson Street, and then in about 8 months, they had built a building, and lives was being changed, testimonies was happening, men and women being transformed for the greatness and for the glory of God. In 1963, they purchased a property here at the First Baptist Church located on 154 Chicago Street, brought their congregation over from Jefferson Street, again started worshiping God, just started impacting their city and their community, and to see God do some amazing things. They knew that from the generations behind and the generations forward, that God was going to continue to use this congregation in mighty ways. 1993, they purchased 10 acres of property right there on Highway 49. 1997, they broke ground in December of that year, started constructing the first building that would be built on Highway 49, changed the name to Heartland Christian Center, had their dedication on June 1999, and from that day forward, they recognized again that God was doing something. And again, you and I today are a byproduct of that, of seeing the faithfulness and the faith of men and women throughout the generations. In November of the year of 2000, my family and I became pastors of Heartland Christian Center. As we came up from Alabama, drove into the city, I knew then that God had called us to this city, that we too was going to build off the generations before us. We was going to take what God done in the past and build for the future and see God do some amazing things. We took a congregation of 50 or 60 believers that was so in love with Jesus and so in love with what God was wanting to do, remembering their strong heritage, but also they looked forward to a bright future. And it was from there that we would begin to move and cast vision and just see God do some amazing things through this generation. Guys, we've celebrating 65 years of one generation building on the other. And you know what? You look at the history of this great church. We were family, we are family, and we will always be family. And we're going to continue to find ways of how we can impact our city to make sure that the generation doesn't stop here, but we keep building and continue to build one generation on the other as we climb and we move forward and we succeed in those areas where God's called us to succeed.